Let's celebrate the holidays the only way Torchwood know how to. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. TARDIS, and as I make my way through Big Finish's back catalogue, I figured I'd jump forward through the Torchwood monthly range to get to their seasonal outing, their Christmas outing this year, Reflect, written by Joseph Lidster and starring Sophie Aldred as Ace and Paul Clayton as John Colchester. And yes, I'm aware I've not got round to stories like Bad Connection, like Widdershins or Hollow Choir. I figured I'd just jump ahead because it's the season. But for those who have been paying attention to the Torchwood monthly range over the past couple of years, you'll notice that this lineup of actors, Sophie Aldred and Paul Clayton, Reflect is not the first time that these two have been paired up together. No, in fact, when it comes to Ace teaming up with Torchwood, it is exclusively this pairing of Ace and Colchester, which started in 2021 with the brilliant Red List, written by James Goss, and then we had Death in Venice, also written by James Goss, and then Sabotage, once again written by James Goss, which came out in February, and as opposed to making it just a flat-out yearly tradition, Reflect comes out later on in that same year. And the premise of Reflect is that during the winter solstice this year, which is the longest night of the year, superstition is abound, where it's supposedly the time when the barrier between the living and the dead is the weakest, which is why there's all the ghost stories at Christmas. Ace and Colchester have gathered here as friends in order to tell spooky Torchwood and alien-related ghost stories to each other. They get 2 stories each in order to bond or freak each other out. The actual reasoning that they've done this is revealed towards the end of the story, but it's an effective premise in order to have just a small bottle episode where you've got Sophie Aldred and Paul Clayton narrating and voice acting their own stories, their retellings of experiences that they've had with Torchwood or with the supernatural. The first story out of the 4 is Ace recounting her experiences while she was still travelling with the 7th Doctor, where they'd had an argument, they'd landed on New Year's Day 1880, and Ace decides to blow off some steam by going to the Natural History Museum because she had some good experiences there growing up as a kid. However, because it's 1880, the building has just been finished, but they haven't put the exhibits in. It's not even open to the public for another couple of years. However, Ace encounters a ghoulish woman inside of the Natural History Museum who, it turns out, has been sent there by Queen Victoria as part of Torchwood in order to investigate any supernatural occurrences that may be happening in the building before it gets open to the public.
I hope you're sitting comfortably.
I am.
Then let me present The Haunting of the Natural History Museum, written and performed by Ms. Dorothy McShane.
Oh, are we doing titles? How thrilling.
It was the year of our Lord. Oh, come on. I've only just started. What's so funny?
You trying to do posh. Oh, no, go on.
The year is 1880. Queen Victoria is on the throne. Oliver Twist is asking for more. Jack the Ripper. Gaslights. Smog.
I mean, most of those things are from very different years.
I'm creating atmosphere, which you are spoiling.
Sorry, I'll be quiet as I try to imagine the entire 19th century.
It's January the 1st, 1880. A small blue police box is standing in Trafalgar Square, and a small girl in a black bomber jacket covered in badges is storming off through the snow. I hadn't been travelling with the Doctor long. Now, he wasn't perfect, but oh, I was very loud, very angry, some might say occasionally impetuous.
Well, thank goodness you've changed.
And as you heard from the clip there, what I really liked about Reflect overall is that these just aren't like uninterrupted stories that Sophie Aldred and Paul Clayton narrate. There's actual like banter and back and forth where one character might ask for some clarifying details or might come in with a snide remark or a bit of criticism as to how the story is unfolding, and then they just sort of have to roll with that and continue telling the story. And Ace decides to do full-on voices and lay the atmosphere on thick and give the story's actual actual titles, which Colchester starts to adopt for his own stories later on, which is really fun. It kind of shows that these two are ideologically opposed for many reasons, but on this night, on this winter solstice, Colchester is willing to let his guard down a little bit more. And the first story is a fun, atmospheric look through the Natural History Museum to try and purge it of ghosts, and it has a pretty somber ending, which reflects on Ace's relationship with her doctor, the Seventh Doctor, and also her inability to save somebody in that museum. I won't dive into spoilers, but it is a theme that carries over into many of the stories that they tell in this hour-long drama. And the second story, told by Colchester, is kind of the more bare bones story, because, you know, Colchester is not one for the theatrics, he's not one to give everybody voices, but he decides to open up to Ace about how he joined Torchwood and the experiences that led up immediately to him being recruited by the shadowy agency. And I don't know too much about Colchester pre the Among Us box sets that came out last year. However, it was an incredibly moving story, especially with Colchester, who is normally someone who is emotionally distant from his colleagues, deciding to open up to, of all people, Ace. And the quivering of his voice and the way that Paul Clayton plays it so superbly, and like he's finding the whole recounting of these traumatic things that happened to him growing up, and him trying to find some solace with this relationship that he's got with another man in this story is really, really moving. Like I probably not the best environment to listen to this, but I was listening to this story while doing some Christmas shopping, and I sort of had to take a break from shopping for a few minutes because I was like, this is getting really heavy, this is getting really intense. I'm trying not to cry in the supermarket because it's really powerful, dramatic stuff. It was really, really powerful. I can sound like a bit of a broken record for this review, but I can't dive too deeply into what is talked about because of spoilers and such. But yeah, it's like so much of it does come from the narration and the formatting of the story. I think that Joseph List has done a really great job with the formatting, but there's clearly a lot of like thoughtful sound design being done in this story by Maddie Searle, and a lot of it is like it's really restrained in a very effective way. It could have, you know, added more sound effects. It could have added more ambience and atmosphere, but no, it really just hones in on those performances and on those voices by Sophie Aldred and Paul Clayton. And I just sort of like in my mind's eye got this image of, you know, Colchester sat in the chair by the fire telling Ace this story, and like he's like trying not to break down while talking about it. And I just sort of like got this image, this visual image of Ace kind of like watching from a distance, like really too polite to interrupt, because like she also knows that this is very therapeutic for him, and just sort of like that aspect, that unspoken connection between the two, even though Ace is not saying a word and it's an audio medium. I really felt it through that story. It was really, really powerful stuff. I loved it. I loved it a lot. It was really, really good. And then the third story, Joseph Lidster, Chad that he is, decides to world build the very first Torchwood team in London, set up by Queen Victoria in Tooth and Claw 10 years prior to Ace's story, which is set in December 1887, where you've got Miss Amelia Chawton, and Ace is reading from her haunted diary, and you've got this trio of mismatched Torchwood agents in the 1880s, just starting out and getting established in London. You've got Amelia Chawton, who's this sort of like pistol-wielding aristocratic lady. You've got Christopher, who's a circus strongman, and you've got Echo, and she's a vegetarian. I like how that's sort of like her controversial defining trait in the 1880s, and Amelia Chawton's like, everyone I know loves a good slice of beef, but not Echo. I like how that's her controversial character quirk in this version of Torchwood. And it's this really fascinating story about a haunted mirror that gets brought into the Torchwood base that Amelia becomes obsessed with. And she's like really vain and really worried about aging and becoming essentially becoming like someone who's thrown away by society because of her age. There is, of course, like the gender politics of it all, which is still relevant today, but is definitely much more of the time of the 19th century that this story is based. But yeah, it's just like this 15 20-minute diary extracts being read out by Ace. And it's just this really fascinating world building that I would genuinely love to see and like hear more of it built upon in the future. Like, I want Amelia and Christopher and Echo to like have full cast audio dramas, because that premise is too cool not to explore. Or maybe, I don't know, if Joseph Lidster's got time, he's a busy dude, maybe actually write an actual paperback or something of like this Torchwood team in the 1880s, where Queen Victoria is sort of like this ominous like figure in the Tower of London dictating these orders with like an iron fist in order to try and track down the Doctor and suss out extraterrestrial alien life in London in this setting. It would be sort of like a darker Paternoster gang, I imagine. But that premise is too cool to not do something with. And Joseph Lister's just like, yeah, this is just some world building that I'm going to drop in, no joke, 1/4 of this Torchwood Christmas range and have Sophie Aldred narrate it. Sophie Aldred could even play Amelia Cholton. I don't know, that might be a fun bit of casting. But yeah, that's terrific. That's like, the story itself is really, really great. But I want to hear more of this original Torchwood team from the 1880s. Like, as the organization is going through its teething issues in this turbulent time during the Industrial Revolution. Yeah, that's amazing. That's so good. And then there is a slight issue in terms of like the structure and the pacing of Reflect, because you know, the story is just over an hour long and you're at like minute 55 and Ace is just finishing her third story and you know you've got one left, and it's like there's like 5 to 10 minutes of the release left, which means that Colchester's fourth and final story does not get that much time to build suspense, and it's a little bit unfortunate. Maybe, I don't know, they could have maybe trimmed a bit from the other stories in order to give that the breathing room I think it needed, because it does feel like Reflect sort of really hurtles towards like its last couple of minutes, which is a shame, because I think it's a really great like concept for a story that also involves the listener. Like, you know, it gets really into, if you listen to this thing with headphones or great speakers near you, oh, you're in for an absolute, like, a chilly time this winter solstice. But yeah, it's a strong final act for this story called The Lady in Green, narrated by Colchester, which also relates to one of Ace's earlier stories. It ties in a really effective way. It's just a shame that that final story, which might have some commentary on social media and about the obsession with selfies and trying to like put a creepypasta into people's social media presences. You know, it's an effective idea. I just wish that it had a bit more time to be fleshed out in this one. Apart from that, though, Reflect is terrific. It kind of culminates what, for the most part, you know, I've not listened to the last 3 Torchwood Monthly Ranges yet, has been a really, really good year for Torchwood's monthly range. You know, you had the Yanto trilogy, you had Sabotage, you had Poppet, which was this weird, fascinating, like, Welsh folklore story, which started the year off really creepily and effectively. Poppet is, like, one of my favourite releases of the entire year, and Torchwood just dropped it in January, like an epic mic drop for the rest of the year. And I think that Reflect is a really strong end as well. I'll get to Bad Connection and Widdershins and Hollow Choir soon, but yeah, Reflect is really strong. Really, really great listen. And like I said, it really emotionally got to me in Colchester's first story. And it did some really interesting things with like Torchwood world building more broadly that I would genuinely love to hear expanded upon in future releases. Whether or not they're done by Joseph Lidster remains to be seen. But, you know, just imagine just dropping incredible, awesome lore dump in just 1/4 of this storytelling winter solstice epic. Oh, Giga Chad move. Huge cojones. I loved it. So yeah, that's Torchwood Reflect. Like I said, there's still a couple from this year that I've not listened to yet, but if you have been listening to the Torchwood monthly range, let me know in the comment section below what your favourite release of the year is. I loved Poppet, I loved Missing Molly, I loved Reflect as well. The Restoration of Catherine was also a lot of fun. Endgame was great. It's been a great year for the Torchwood monthly range, blimey. Yeah, really great work from these writers at Big Finish. So yeah, I hope you folks enjoyed this review. See you all next time.